Order and declare a quorum. We do have all members present and our student board member. At this time, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we'll begin with the approval of this evening's agenda. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any discussion?
Do we need to?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Maybe I shouldn't have interrupted you.
That's okay. Well, I was just, you said everything.
By note of explanation, we have someone who's on the way who is to deliver a report, and so we're just going to place her a little later in the agenda.
Got it. That was
So-
my question, yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
Because it doesn't involve a vote, we can have it
yes.
somewhere elsewhere. Okay.
Yes. Okay, so we'll have the vote on approval of this evening's agenda. All those in favor of approval? All right, so we have 7 affirmatives. So we have an approved agenda, and we'll move to the minutes.
Mrs. Williams, I move for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Tuesday, March 1st, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any additions or corrections to the minutes of the closed session dated Tuesday, March 1st?
2021 or 2022?
2.
Okay. Just making sure.
I didn't catch that. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. We have 7 affirmative. That set of minutes has been approved.
Mrs. Williams, I move for the business meeting minutes dated March 1st, 2022.
Mr. Gaspard, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any additions or corrections to the business meeting minutes dated Tuesday, March 1st, 2022? All those in favor? All right, we have 7 affirmative votes. Student member concurs. So that set of minutes is approved. Okay, at this time we have public comment. And I'll read from Board Policy KD regarding procedures for business meetings. Each person wishing to address the Board of Education is encouraged but not required to sign up prior to the meeting and may address any topic concerning Washington County Public Schools except personnel or student matters which clearly identify an individual or individuals. Each speaker may speak for up to 5 minutes. Mr. Bickford is our timekeeper. And Mr. Bickford, would you like to explain?
Sure. When you have about 30 seconds left, I'll hold up the yellow shape, and then when you're out of time, I'll hold up the red shape, and please wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. First person I have on the list signed up to speak is Marilee Kearns. Ms. Kearns?
Good evening, Marilee Kearns, 5 Stafford Avenue, Greensboro, Maryland. Most of you guys know me.
And I won't take my whole 5 minutes. I'm here on behalf of the citizens of Boonesboro, which I am one, and I also serve on the town council. And we're just here wanting the Board of Ed to be willing to sit at the table with all the interested parties for the proposed new designed intersection at the Boonesboro Educational School Complex. We've had the landowners and the property owners at that. They're on board to sit at the table with us. The developer is finally at the table. The state highway is recommending this plan. Our town council is on board. And we just want you guys to sign on and say, you know, you're willing to be on board with us. We're just securing a mutual interest and cooperation for the project at this time. It's not a commitment of funding or specifics. We're not that far. This new design plan would offer us a solution to the traffic issues, the bus exit problem, getting safe crosswalks to school for the students that walk from the development. It provides an intersection with a traffic light. It's a big win for the Boonesboro community. We have like 6,000 cars that go through there every day. And this is just something that's been a goal of the community and the bypass. So we just don't want it buried in the details at this moment. We're looking for you to have a seat at the table and work with all the parties. We're just asking you to move it promptly along. Time is of the essence. We present to the state legislators to try to get some state funding this week, and, you know, the Board of Ed signing on and buying into this plan is crucial to the success of the project moving forward. We're willing to rewrite the memorandum of understanding to suit the BOE's needs. We just want it to just, you know, move on, and any support and any help you can get to getting that happening quickly would be greatly appreciated by the residents and the council in Boonesboro.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. I gave you handouts that kind of explains it, but.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to come forward to speak during public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Cassandra Pence.
Ms. Pence?
So I am an online homeschooling through a private academy, but I was a student in Washington County. In middle school, I had applied for a magnet program at a school. All of my hard work was taken away from me through a situation that happened with another student, and the solutions that were given and that were taken were not in my favor. I had to move schools, so I had to come out of that magnet program that I was in for visual arts, and my question and my concern is why my thoughts and ideas were not taken into consideration. This did happen a few years ago, so I have gotten over it. It's still fresh in my mind. I have ADHD, and because of what had happened, I had formed some anxiety. That mix does not go well, and it kind of stayed with me through the rest of my 8th grade and into high school. I was not able to do school efficiently and effectively. As a result, I had to leave and go through an online public academy, or private academy, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. It's not the board's practice to respond to individuals, but we thank you for coming forward and offering your comments. Dr. Pugh is in the rear. If you could turn and see her, she's going to put her hand up for you. And if you could speak with her, that would be of help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Uh-huh.
My name is Melissa Power. I am Cassandra's mom. What I want to tell you is a little bit more detail than what my daughter gave. I used to work in Washington County Public Schools. I used to be the president of a PTO within Washington County Public Schools. It was astounding to me that not only was I an employee and a parent representative, that I didn't get a phone call from the school system, from the school system, from the school resource officer, or from juvenile services as to the nature of why my daughter had an altercation at the school. She was sexually assaulted in the classroom, and she was one of 4 victims. I came to a town hall, Dr. Boyd, and I told you about her. You told me to talk to the director of secondary education, and I did. You assured me that he would handle it, and he didn't. I had to sit down with the administrators of the school that my daughter attended, and they pointed their finger in my daughter's face and said that his reputation was being put in jeopardy because of her. She did nothing. She was violated. And on top of that, that very same administrator told me that he knew and had a good relationship with the administrator of my school, where I worked. Now, it pains me to say that not too long after I pulled her, I had to pull her. I asked once, twice, 3 times for her and the perpetrator to be separated. My daughter was sexually assaulted in a classroom where she had to go into a locker room and change. The perpetrator was allowed to go into that same locker room at the same time. Now, if you've been violated by somebody, I can tell you, you do not want to go into a locker room and change in front of them to get ready for gym. And you guys did nothing. And then I started not receiving support in school. I was a paraprofessional. I was punched, kicked, hit, bit, spit on. I was abused in my position. I reached out for help countless times. I even got notification from the board that, hey, you haven't had your breaks? That's okay. We're going to come out and we'll give them to you. We never got it. We never got it. You all want to talk about retention? Staff retention? You don't care. At least it doesn't feel that way if you care. I know some of you weren't on the board then. But if you care, you reach out, you talk to them. You talk to the people that are working for you, that are on the front lines, that are getting all this abuse. I've watched as children watch as others hit and spit and use expletives, anything under the sun. And there's no reprimand except, well, little Johnny, you really shouldn't be doing that. Really? That's all we have? That's all we have. The girl that assaulted my daughter, I had to ask the question, has anybody helped her? Why did she come to school and assault 4 girls? What's going on in her life? Why did I have to ask that question? Why was I the only one? Why was the parent of the victim the one that asked that question? Where was the school system? Where did you guys help? You have a lot of kids crying out for help that abuse the teachers, that abuse other kids. Where are you? Where's the leadership? I know some of you weren't on the board then, but you are now. There is no standard for sexual assault victims in this county. My daughter was dismissed. She was the one that was removed from the classroom when that little girl would go up to her and tell her that her case, that she was the one that was wronged. So the perpetrator was saying that she was wronged and not my daughter? My daughter's been fighting anxiety for 3 years. I left the school system because I didn't get the support that I needed in the situations that I had where I was punched, kicked, hit, bit, spit on, and shouted at. Do yourself a favor and start asking questions of the people that are working with the students. Start asking questions of the parents. Get involved.
Thank you, Ms. Pence. I'm sorry, Ms. Power. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Superintendent Michael, President Williams, Vice President Stauffer, board members, and our very own North Eye, Tanish Gupta. My name is Christy Gross. I'm a reading intervention teacher at North Hagerstown High School, and I would like to share with you the letter that I sent to our county commissioners last evening. My name is Christy Gross, and I'm a reading intervention teacher at North High. I love my job, and I am proud of what I do every day. I also feel blessed to work with such amazing staff at North. I know you all want what is best for the citizens of Washington County. It's why you sought these elected positions, because clearly you too are passionate about helping and serving the people in our county. It is for this reason that I implore you to increase your funding from what you have allocated to WCPS in the past, and to prove to the students, parents, teachers, and administrators that you honestly care about improving our educational system. Our school communities are reeling from the after effects of the COVID pandemic. Students are suffering from the loss of in-person instruction during virtual learning, and many are vastly behind in social and emotional learning. Many of them act out, cannot interact appropriately with peers and even staff, and are apathetic and unmotivated to complete work. This is much, much worse than it was pre-pandemic. But despite these challenges, our dedicated WCPS teachers and staff continue to bend over backward to meet students' needs and push them to succeed. Our schools need more counselors, more social workers, and more teachers' aides, at least for the foreseeable future until things begin to settle and return to normal. We need more teachers to ease the large numbers of students in our classes. Our hardworking ESPs deserve a new, updated pay scale to reflect that they are valued employees and deserve to be compensated as such. We need more resources to continue to provide the cutting-edge skills, lessons, and technology that will carry our students into college, career, and beyond. Simply telling the Washington County Board of Education that you are only willing to fund the very bare minimum is, quite frankly, an insult. It's offensive to hardworking teachers like me, and to my husband, a WCPS paraprofessional, and to our son, a current WCPS student. It's akin to you telling us that we are not that important and that we can get by with just the bare minimum. We are exhausted. Teachers, by nature, are creative, energetic, compassionate, and loving, but facing mounting challenges day in and day out at our schools, and then seeing the county commissioner's response to the WCBOE's budget request is disheartening. It is a slap in the face. If you expect us to do better, we will always try to do so, but with your financial support and by fully funding Superintendent Michael's budget request, just imagine what we educators could do. Finally, I invite each one of you, our elected county commissioners, to come visit any one of our fabulous teachers at North High. Shadow us for a day, a half day, or even a class period or two. See the immense challenges and frustrations we face every day, but also witness the incredible teaching and learning that takes place. After even a short visit, I believe you'll agree that fully funding the budget request is a smart and necessary decision. I look forward to hearing from you, and I thank you for your serious and respectful consideration. And I thank you for the time to speak tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Good evening. My name is Ethan Lowen. At these meetings, the primary topic of discussion has become how much additional money should the county commissioners give to this board, and it's an issue that says a lot. And so there are a couple of things that I do want to go over. One is it is necessary to point out that the county commissioners already spend 43% of their budget on this board. With the remaining 57% of their budget, the county commissioners are responsible for funding the community college as well, police, road maintenance, and of course the fire departments and emergency medical services. Currently, the county is running many years behind in repairing roads in order to keep other priorities such as this board funded. In order for money to be taken away from these other services, you have to be able to make the case that an additional dollar given to the Board of Education will lead to a greater benefit than a dollar spent on the police or on EMTs. The only way for the commissioners to know that is for them to see the effects your policies are having on the community, and they are seeing what the rest of us see. In this county, 8% of families are homeschooling. That is compared to the average of the other school districts in our area being just 6.1%. This Board of Education has the distinction of driving a third more of our families to turn their lives inside out and upside down in order to homeschool than anywhere else. Then there are the library books with their graphic depictions of pornography and stories that give accounts of pedophilia as positive experiences. It's to the point that our very own delegate, Dr. Brenda Cham, who's herself a career educator, was so disturbed by the fact that you refused to follow the state's guidelines for removing books that she wrote a bill to ensure that school boards have to be honest with the community about what is in the books they are exposing children to. What started as that library bill has now become a much larger bill with far more co-sponsors, including 3 of our county's 4 delegates, to mandate the school boards can no longer hide any part of their curriculum. How many school boards ask taxpayers for more money that are also the motivation for child protection laws? Or the speech therapist who came here and discussed that her student patients were being denied health care because the board was not notifying parents that they could authorize their children to take off their mask during speech therapy. Then 6 weeks ago, on February 8th, the CDC changed their standards for speech development in children to add 6 months to what they now define as normal speech development. It's beyond absurd, of course, for the CDC to try to redefine delayed speech development as normal. Let's be honest, they made that change because they have no solution to the damage their guidance has caused an entire generation. But we have a speech therapist who sat right here at this table warning us not to allow that to happen to our children. And I think it's worth noting that her name is Robin Jeanette. I have a ton of respect for her, and I think she's a hero. You see, this board has ignored everything that the community has said. It has been said many times at these meetings, it's cheaper to educate than to rehabilitate, and I couldn't agree more. However, is it possible that the social contract between the public schools and the community is fracturing, that the academic performance of an ever-growing percent of students is declining, and parents are seeing that when their children are in need of rehabilitation, the reason is increasingly being caused by what they are experiencing in school? Perhaps that is what parents all over America are trying to get school boards to understand, that for the first time in our nation's history, the public school system has lost the ability to see children through the eyes of the parents. And I can hear your response now. We absolutely understand the problems, and we're doing our best. Society is changing. But no, that is not what you need to see as the parents' response. We need you to understand that for years, the policies that you have put in place have sped up the pace that this is happening. The changes you introduce make it worse. You're not victims. You have become one of the instigators that parents now have to deal with. You keep pressuring the commissioners for more money while everything the parents talk about is free. Having a curriculum and library books that parents don't have to be afraid of is free. Notifying parents that their speech therapy receiving children could take off their mask to get an effective therapy session, that was free. No amount of money was going to change that attitude. You chose to keep parents in the dark. The large number of homeschooling families in this county, none of them pulled their kids out of school because they wanted something fancier or more expensive at home. Those parents want their children's education to progress at a normal pace again without worrying about what plans you have for their kids that you are keeping them in the dark about as well. Because the attitude you have towards speech therapy students isn't any different than the attitude towards any other student. You say the issue is money, but parents say the issue is your policies and your actions. Therefore, if you get money from the county commissioners, good for you. That's great. But whether you do or not, will you commit to now spending your time discussing the range of issues that parents are spending their time discussing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowen. Are there any other speakers that wish to come forward? Okay, at this time, we will have board member response to public comment. Colleagues?
I just want to thank Councilmember Kearns for coming and all the hard work you've done on this. I'll speak for myself. I'm all for us cooperating with you, and I imagine you'll get a similar sentiment from staff. So I appreciate you coming out.
Staff is cooperating. We just kind of want to hope in a letter or sign on to go.
Thank you. Mr. Gupta?
I want to thank all of the teachers, and especially from North High, who has seen the crowd today. So much red. I don't think I've ever seen so much red. A lot of teachers who've educated me, a lot of really great teachers. I'm so happy to see you guys here at a board meeting. It really is an honor to be in your presence.
I have a question. The figure that the county commissioners put out, the percentage of the budget that goes to education, doesn't that also include the library and HCC, if I'm not mistaken, in that pie chart?
Generally, when they, when they list education, they do. At one time, the Board of Education was 60% of the local budget, and over time, it's transitioned to closer to 40%, so just a change. The budget that we presented to the county commissioners was a 4.41% increase in funding in a time period that we're looking at 7, 8, 9% inflation. And following the time period, which I indicated during my budget session, where staff were only offered a 1% raise 2 years ago and 1.25% raise last year. So I just want to note for the record that it was a 4.41% increase, a very modest increase, again, compared to inflation, and coming out of a year with inflation. So just things to note. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to old business. We have no old business, and that brings us right to new business. Our first item of new business this evening is the consent agenda with our supervisor of purchasing, Mr. Scott Baker, presenting.
So this Kate is here.
She just came in.
Yes.
Okay, we'll give her right on that.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. Tonight I have 9 items for your review. These items have been reviewed by our Purchasing Review Committee and are being recommended for approval. Staff is available if you have any additional questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the awards, renewals, and procurements for Chromebooks to CDWG at a cost of $2,812,617.50. Dental Program Administration to United Concordia Companies, Inc. at an approximate 3-year cost of $7 million. Unit price contract for tree trimming and removal to Antietam Tree Service, Inc., Carbaugh Tree Service, and Potomac Grounds Care, LLC at the unit prices listed. Electrical upgrades at Washington County Technical High School to Warner Construction at a cost of $2,090,000. Technology for Washington County Technical High School to CDWG at a cost of $157,954.45. Maintenance and support of Avaya VoIP telephone system renewal to Carousel Industries at a cost of $67,783.26. School bus and vehicle tires renewal to Donald B. Rice Tire Company at the unit prices listed. Enterprise Resource Management System, Munis renewal, cloud hosting upgrade to Tyler Technologies at a cost of $1,498,415. And unit price contract for fencing to Han Fence and Construction at the unit prices listed.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Questions? Any discussion?
Yeah, I only have one question. For the, I think it was the fencing, that's the one where we used a bid that Frederick County has done, right?
Correct.
How long ago was that bid that they used? I got to imagine it's relatively recent, otherwise we wouldn't be able to use it with inflation the way it is. But, you know, are we certain, is there a similar process that they use that we would use also? How does that look?
Yeah, they did this bid back in 2018, and then it renews, I believe, annually. So the pricing can be updated, you know, at their renewal time. And I believe they just renewed it, I don't remember exact date, but it was, I believe it was either, I think it was the end of last year they renewed that bid. So we actually have talked about doing our own bid, but we just have some fencing projects that need to be done. And we had one recently where there was a fence taken out by a car, I think, in one of our tennis courts. So we had to get something done quickly. So this will allow us, you know, the ability to have that work done in a timely fashion, right? But we may end up looking at doing our own bid for this, but we just wanted to get something in place, so we had a fencing bid for some projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Bickford, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I just had one thing. Could you speak to the electrical upgrades at the Washington County Technical High School at $2 million?
Yeah, that's probably a question for Mr. Rollins.
That's all right.
Just what the
Yeah, that's why I was
upgrades
here.
are, or what the nature
Yeah,
of the
just kind of
project
go
is?
over, because when people say $2 million for upgrades for electrical, They're gonna go like, what in the heck are you?
Actually, between the cost of it and the availability of resources, I think now needs to be split into 2 years, I believe. Mr. Rollins?
Yeah, well, that project's going to replace all the switchgear in the building and all the distribution panels in the building. So all the electrical nerve center of the school is going to be replaced. That stuff is from the original construction of the school in 1972. So we can't get spare parts anymore. So we have to do it, or we're going to run into a possibility of the school not being able to operate if we don't replace this stuff in a timely fashion. It is being done over 2 summers because the lead time on switchgear right now, the big main breakers, is 35, 45 weeks. This is what we're being told from both the manufacturers and the contractors. So we're going to go in there this summer, and we're going to do a lot of the distribution panels, stuff that we can get, some of the wiring, and get it all set up for next summer when the switchgear comes, to be able to switch that out.
And so how does that affect our new diesel program?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we were counting on having the switchgear there because we're actually having to buy a breaker that's reconditioned on the market to fit into the old switchgear to use on a temporary basis until we get the new switchgear in. So there is going to be a little bit of a cost to the diesel project just to get that breaker in there.
And will we have an upgrade on the generators?
Yes, we're going to get a larger generator that powers all the life safety, fire alarm, well, that's part of life safety, I'm sorry, but communications, walk-ins, more lighting than the current generator does.
Good, thanks.
Mr. South?
I've been told to sit close to the microphone by one of the interpreters. So, first time I've ever been accused of being soft-spoken. But how much, on all these issues here, can we give a general statement as to how much any of these items are being affected by inflation? Just a general overall thing, like the price of the Chromebooks, is inflation affecting the price of the Chromebooks, for example?
We've definitely seen some increases over the last year. I don't know exact numbers.
No.
But we've definitely seen across the board, and it's been, technology you might be able to speak to, but in Rob's construction projects, we've seen some come in higher than we thought, and we've seen some come in lower than we thought. And there's really not any rhyme or reason to why we've seen some of those numbers. But supplies, we've definitely seen increases, and we've continued to see increases, and the gas prices that we are currently seeing are definitely driving additional increases that, plastic bags, all the products that are made out of byproducts of oil, we're definitely seeing increases across the board.
Fuel escalator cost or whatever that is. I know in food services, I always talk to them about availability of food.
Yep.
And they're seeing surcharges on fuel charges of some type.
I was just going to say the Chromebooks last spring when I was here, they were $309 a piece. Now they're $359 a piece. So they've gone up a bit.
Any particular reason why? Just
I think
supply
that's-
chain and all that other
Supply
stuff
chain,
we
yeah.
hear and everything?
It's labor, it's component parts. I mean, I've talked to some vendors who have, when they talk to their manufacturers, they might have something, 5 of the 6 things we need. 5 of the 6 come in. That one is they have, thousands of products sitting, waiting on one component that they can go back and add that component to ship out. And that component might have a 30-week lead time. And so it's labor, both labor at the manufacturing level and at the distribution level, with trucking and, warehousing. It's been an across-the-board. There's not been one thing that we've purchased that hasn't had some sort of either pricing issue or distribution issue. From all the things from food to construction to maintenance to technology.
So it is a factor.
Definitely.
And it's going to keep being a factor.
I don't see it changing in the near future.
Thank you.
Mr. Gupta?
I just had a question about the Chromebooks. So I see here there's 8 or 9 schools that I see here there's 8 or 9 schools this is going to. Are there any schools after this purchase that won't have Chromebooks for the next school year?
Yes, so this year, the plan is to take about half of the elementary schools and give them Chromebooks. So the other half of the elementary schools will still be on iPads for next school year. And then in the 23-24 year, everyone will be on Chromebooks at that point.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen, how was the determination made as to which schools, which elementary schools would get the Chromebooks?
We have a fixed number of Chromebooks that we can provide. It's around 4,500 or 4,500 to 5,000. So we had to pick schools that added up to that amount, including the staff. We tried to pick schools that were representative of the different types of schools, populations, and that's how we arrived at the exact schools.
Okay, so there are 9 out of 20-some elementary schools that are going to receive the iPads or the Chromebooks, and they'll be using those instead of iPads.
Correct.
So then, what's the plan then in terms of getting Chromebooks to the other schools, the other elementary schools?
The other elementary schools will receive them at the beginning of the 23-24 school year. So I'll come around this time next year to request the money for those.
For the other 17 or 18 schools?
Correct. The population of the 9 equals the 17, so they're about half, so.
Absolutely.
And what will you do with the iPads that you're not using?
So some of them will be repurposed. The ones that are newer, some of the high schools use iPads still, so we will use them there. They do bring good resale value, so we can sell the ones. And then the oldest ones are out of service. So we do sell those, and we get a little bit of money for that, but that money is put back towards new devices.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Then we'll move.
I was going to ask
Go
about
ahead.
the dental program. It's another sizable bill, but it's self-funded. Just what will this mean for we have many employees here. What will this mean? Any improvements in dental services?
By staying with the current provider, we will avoid disruption in the dentists that our employees are using. So it doesn't look like it will result in any kind of a premium change. We actually have lower administrative costs with this, much lower than what we have currently.
Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move to the vote. We're voting on the motion made by Mr. Bickford and seconded by Mrs. Murray to approve the consent agenda as read by Mr. Bickford. All those in favor? Okay, we have 7 affirmative votes and the student member concurs. So we have an approved consent agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item of new business is approval of the Board of Education's fiscal year 2023 general fund operating budget.
Good evening, Mrs. Williams,
Good
members of the board, Dr. Michael, Mr. Brandenburg, Mr. Sisler are here with me. This evening, the matter before you is the adoption of the Board of Education's FY23 general fund budget. By way of background, the board at its meeting on February 1 accepted the superintendent's recommended budget and adopted it as their draft. Subsequent to that, the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee met, reviewed the budget, provided a recommendation at the meeting on March 1, which was at the same time that the board also had a hearing. The board also amended the budget during its business meeting on March 1, and that brings us to tonight, where we're seeking your approval of the FY23 general fund budget at $318,589,838.
Thank you, Mr. Peru. Is there a motion?
President Williams, I move to approve the Board of Education's FY 2023 general fund operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Questions or any discussion? No? Then we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approval of the board's fiscal year 2023 general fund operating budget? Okay, we're unanimous, 7 affirmative, and the student member concurs. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go back and pick up the first part of reports to the board, and we'll continue then with reports to the board after personnel action. We have Mrs. Cade here, who is our legislative representative, and she's, along with Mrs. Ersprung, will be briefing us on the happenings in the 2022 Maryland legislative session to date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting trip
If I
out.
may, I'd just like to explain about Mrs. Kate. She contacted me, and you were stuck in an traffic because of an accident on 70. And how long were you stuck in that traffic?
Well, that one was only half an hour, and then there was another long delay in Frederick, and then a shorter delay once between Frederick and here. So my hour-and-a-half trip took 3.5 hours today.
So you hit the traffic coming off 270 onto 70 around Frederick, which is a mess. Yeah.
It's been an
I'm
interesting
glad you made it here
afternoon.
safely. I'm sorry if I took away from you.
No,
Thank
not
you.
at all.
Thank you. The legislative halls are still very quiet. I was in the other day and met with most of the Washington County delegation, but there still is not the activity level and the bustling that we're used to in the legislative halls. The Senate is hearing their bills in person now, but the House is still hearing everything online, which of course is easy because it makes it easier for people to watch and listen to their deliberations and participate from afar. But it's very strange, but that doesn't mean that things are not happening. We are into that last 30 days of the session, the crossover time when bills have to get from one house to the next in order to be assured that they'll be considered. And lots of bills getting amended in subcommittees and being sent to the floor. So there's a whole lot of action right now. And not much has been finalized. Not much has gone through both sides, but a lot is about to. It's interesting this year, there seem to be a whole lot of bills about student health, and they're all quite responsible bills, but, again, they will be taking you maybe farther than in making additional requirements on you. One has to do with broncholators. We already have the EpiPens well established, but the broncholators and who can administer them and whether a child has to have a prescription for them, but then also having some available for cases of emergency, et cetera, who gets trained and so forth. And similarly, in the case of seizures, the who will be trained in each school to deal with seizures, and which apparently are very complicated because there's a lot of different kinds of seizures and different kinds of treatments. And then the parents must also provide the school with a lot of information. If they know their child is likely to have seizures, they have responsibilities to provide information and medication and so forth. Then thirdly, there's another one on anaphylactic food allergies, requiring more attention to the planning of what and the notification of what food allergy foods might be being served, and the principals having responsibility to make sure that that is being dealt with students that they know have allergies. And a simpler one, there's a bill in to increase the number of vision exams. Right now, there is a vision exam in grade 1 and in grade 8, and this would establish another one in grade 3 or 4. Currently, the bill doesn't make it clear who pays for it, and it looks like the school system would be paying for it. And so we're trying to get that amended to have that cost borne by the state. But that one seems to make sense, as all of these make sense, but again, they cause more complexity and more regulations and more procedures for you all. The bill that I mentioned before to allow limited mental health absences as excused absences appears to be going through. We did get that bill amended so that it says limited absences, not so that a child could be absent for a month and their parents could say this was a mental health need. It would be a limited, and the school system gets to define what they mean by limited. There's a bill in that would require a registered nurse in each school. We know that that can't be done fiscally, or there's not that kind of nursing availability. Not that it wouldn't be a good thing, but that bill I don't think will go through because it clearly is a mandate that would be very difficult to meet. And a non-health bill that focuses on an individual student is House Bill 515, which allows student athletes to modify their uniforms in ways that make them more modest. I don't know that you've had a problem with uniforms for cheerleaders or so forth that some students felt were too revealing, but this would allow them to adjust the uniform in certain ways. And that seems to be something that people feel there is a need for. Speaking of students, the legislation to require that the boards have student members with voting rights has not moved, but has been heard, but there hasn't been any movement on that bill. And the students are assured of the rights to participate in peaceful demonstrations in House Bill 495, but the school system would develop the framework for what that meant, where it could be, how long it could be. But it gives students quite a bit of latitude to organize and have peaceful demonstrations. But just to look at how a bill looks pretty benign, but maybe really isn't. This Bill of Rights, 1152, a student Bill of Rights, it starts out looking, each student in a public school has the following rights: the right to a safe and caring and welcoming school environment, the right to support for student learning so that all students have a safe place to make mistakes, et cetera, the right to a school in which all students are accepted regardless of background or differences, et cetera, and it goes on down. Accommodations for academic, emotional, and social needs, the right to healthy and nutritious food, the right to equal access to school sports and school-sanctioned extracurricular activities. Well, those are things, I think, goals that you have for students. But when you start passing legislation that calls something a right, are you getting into a litigious situation? Could students file legal cases saying, well, the food wasn't healthy and nutritious, or I wasn't given a right to equal access to sports and so forth. So that's why every bill, you can't look just at the title. You gotta kind of get into it and kind of realize what it's saying behind what it looks like it's saying. And so that's the kind of bill that we make sure that testimony goes in clarifying and what the real concerns are and why a bill like that could be a dangerous bill rather than a constructive bill. It looks like everybody is going to need training for both staff and students in cybersecurity, and I guess all of us, I don't know, maybe some of you are experts in that already, but I think most of us probably have a considerable need to understand cybersecurity more and to be trained, but how that is going to be, how that final bill will look and what it will really require of staff and of what will require of students is yet to be finalized. And there is still this bill which requires that digital tools must offer equal or equivalent, now it says, access for persons with disabilities. This is for people without vision. And this is a really complex requirement that, because to have the ability for all of the digital tools that are developed either for purchase or by a teacher, have that additional access for persons of low vision. So that one is complex and troubling. And again, there's a lot of virtue to it, as to many of the bills that go in, but there's always side effects and things that people need to be aware of. And so that one we're still following very closely. I'm not going to go into the virtual schools bills. They're even within the committee that is working on the bill, they've been having arguments about what they want for the long term in terms of virtual school, what can be allowed. There is currently a virtual school on the Eastern Shore that 9 of the counties work together to establish, and it has about 350 students, and it is done by a private for-profit vendor. And that's one of the issues. People feel that it's important that that school be preserved, and because it's really serving the Eastern Shore well, but at the same time, the whole issue of certified teachers, who certified in this state, certified elsewhere, who is teaching, who is making profit, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a whole kind of new field that we're deep into now, and but it's not going to affect what you're doing in terms of COVID completion. There's no intention of changing all of that. Still continues to be strong dissension and really emotional testimony regarding the use of restraint and seclusion. I'm not sure that that's a big issue here, but that has, as you know, there was a big case in Frederick, and there are issues across the state. What the special education schools, the special schools like Krieger Institute and so forth, can use in terms of restraint versus, what a public school can use, and also about seclusion. These are complicated issues. We're seeing these needs in the schools for certain students to really be taken care of in some way that they protect themselves or they're not harming others, but what are the right ways to do that? So that's still on the table. There's no movement on the reportable offense bills, either the one that Delegate Parrott put in or the one that would have really decimated the reportable offense bill. They're just, so far, that one, which was put in by the subcommittee, by a committee assistant chairman, vice chairman, and was really something that Delegate Atterbury, who's now chairman of Ways and Means, had really pushed in last year. But it doesn't seem to be her priority this year. So maybe that's just going to quietly go away. And there's a little talk about SROs. There is one bill in that would require Baltimore's SROs to carry guns, which they don't do now. And I don't know that one's going to go through. As I said last month, I think the financial literacy bill this year, which has come in year after year after year after year, will pass this year, and I think there will be a requirement for a semester course in financial literacy as a high school graduation requirement. There seems to be, well, more than half of the members of the House of Delegates are sponsors of that bill, and it's got legs. It's moving. The new climate bill, I don't know if you read even today, it was passed on the Senate floor last night. An amendment into that says that subject to there being money available in a certain fund, local school systems from July 2023 through June 30th, 2033 shall be construed to meet net zero energy requirements in new schools. For each school constructed by a local school system during that general same period, the school system shall consider whether the school should be constructed with solar panels on the roof. And so this language is pretty much modified from some that we have seen along the way that would require solar panels, et cetera. So this was put in as part of the very big energy bill that passed the Senate last night, will be now being looked at further in the House. The modifications to the blueprint timelines, the one that lets you have another year to do your plan in order that the AIB and the state can, MSDE can do their plans, or AIB can do its plan, and the state can give you guidelines and so forth. That bill will pass. The MSDE wanted more deadlines extended, but the AIB, the Accountability Board, which is just getting its muscle up, and which has a lot of power, it didn't want to go that way yet. And I think they extended a little bit they would extend a little bit the college readiness program for the kids that aren't college ready by the end of their sophomore years. So that will probably pass. And then there's another bill that kind of unscrambles some confusion about MOE versus what the blueprint provides. And they're kind of sitting back and waiting and holding on that, but it will eventually pass, I think, too. Something new this year, historically, over the last 8 years at least, or 7 years, MSDE, the State Board of Education, has not been allowed to testify on bills. None of the state agencies, under this administration, none of the state agencies go in and testify on bills, which I think is very strange, since I used to do that a lot when I was a Deputy Secretary of Housing. But the State Board of Education this year said, we're an independent agency. We're not part of directly part of the executive branch, and we're going to go in. And the new state superintendent himself has been at several hearings testifying very forcefully and very with good documentation. As you know, he's a person who believes in data, and he has the data in hand to support whatever position he's taking. So it's nice, really, for us to have them there at the table often with us, because on the whole, we agree, and if we don't, we make it very clear we don't agree with the locals and the state being on different pathways. But that has been very helpful, really, and the State Board rep has been sitting in or listening in or participating in our Green Street meetings, so that we have a lot of communication going. And if you've probably read, the state has an enormous surplus. And as you probably remember, when we were meeting with the delegation in November, I believe it was, the superintendent spoke quite forcefully to the delegation about the comprehensive comp ed funding and the way that the forms weren't coming in because families think, oh, well, they're getting free lunches. Why do we need to fill out this form? And this has happened all over the state, so that the comp ed money, which is a substantial amount of money, is it like $6,000 a student? I don't know what it is, but I had a figure once. But that money, if your count is down, the amount you get is down. So there had been push for the the governor to include that in his budget, which he didn't do. But Pazam and Mabe, it's all of us, are going in together now to the legislature, but also to the governor, to seek that funding be restored up to the FY21 level. And I think statewide, that's about $124 million. I don't know what the Washington County amount of that would be. But even if it's, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, that's a big help. So that, and then there's, they changed the rate of return on the pension plan, and you suddenly statewide, there is another 78 million, I think it is, that the locals have to come up with to feed the pension program, and so that's going to be asked for as well. So that's really what's happening. There's a lot more happening, but this is really the time when we have to have our antenna up, because those last few days of the session, it's amazing what can happen. There's always a few surprises. And I hope that we will be there to deal with them, and I hope they are happy surprises, and that I will be able to tell you when I come back next month, which will be after the session is over, that things have settled in and that education has done well through this session. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Cade. Mrs. Ersprung, did you have anything that you wanted to add or share?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, questions? Mr. Stauffer?
When's the crossover date? A lot of these bills have been cross-filed, but there's always a date, a crossover date. If the bills don't get from one house to the other, they're pretty
This
much
week,
dead.
It's, and I meant to look it up, and I didn't.
It's Thursday or Friday.
I'm sorry. I don't like to be caught without that information. I meant to look that up, but we're right at that point.
Yeah.
I've been admiring
21st,
Mr.
Monday.
Gesford's
Monday the
shirt.
21st.
The 21st, okay.
Session can't end soon enough. I texted you during the May meeting on Monday, and I said, some of these bills give me a headache. And you, the fact that you agreed. I mean, I shake my head at some of these things. And I hope my colleagues, because I send you all that information about them, I hope you read all that information about all these bills. How many bills have been filed about education this year? It's
Probably, I don't know, it's probably 1,000 maybe? I don't know.
I know it's a lot, and I know that
A lot
the Education Subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee of the House has said numerous times that they have the most bills to tackle.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing how they come up with all those ideas. And
Oh, and I haven't touched a lot of them. Because I'm trying to stay in 15 minutes.
Anyone else? Thank you. Mrs. Cade, thank you, and I hope you have an uneventful and safe trip
Thank you.
home.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all, and I'll see you in a
Good
month.
to see you. All right. Okay, this time we'll have the superintendent's report. Dr. Michael?
Thank you, Mrs. Williams, board members. A couple recognitions here for students. March is National Music Month, as well as National Youth Art Month. And I'm going to call on Michael Sachs to come forward. He's going to share a little bit of information about some of our outstanding music students, as well as some artwork in celebration of National Music Month and National Youth Art Month.
Thank you. Good evening, President Williams, Dr. Michael, and members of the board. Tonight, we would like to recognize March as National Music in Our Schools Month by honoring our Maryland Allstate musicians. Students in grades 7 through 9 can audition for the junior ensembles, and those in grades 10 through 12 are eligible for the senior ensembles. These students auditioned against thousands across from the state of Maryland, and earning the Allstate designation is really quite an achievement. Allstate Concerts this year are live and in person. We struck out with the first one. The chorus was supposed to be this last Saturday and was snowed out. We're hoping to reschedule in May. But this coming weekend will be the the orchestra concert, and then the following Saturday will be the band concert. All of those are at Bowie State University. And at this time, I'd like to recognize those students. For senior band, for Allstate Band, we have Evan Turner from Williamsport High School. For the junior chorus, students from Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, Jocelyn Flores, Claire Freeman, Reese Gibson, Honora Glasgow, Ariana Hankey, Jillian Hull. In the senior chorus, we have Lauren Gunther, Bailey Hall, Andrew Halverson, Leah Jones, Olivia Lopez, Mitchell Parmalee, Nicholas Smith, and Rebecca Yagi. For the senior orchestra, Yifan Zhang from North Hagerstown High School. We also have 2 students who were selected for the NAFME All-National Choir that was held in January. So special recognition to Mitchell Parmalee and Kendall Whittington from Barbara Ingram School for the Arts. I also want to take a moment and thank all of the teachers who helped prepare these students and all of the students who auditioned. Congratulations, students and teachers.
Thank you.
March is also National Youth Art Month, and we want to recognize our students who have earned state honors with their selection to the First Ladies Gallery. This is an online exhibit hosted by MSDE, which will begin March 22nd. From Rockland Woods Elementary, Kalea Plater. Phoenix Cardwell from Barbara Ingram School for the Arts. Berkeley Brown from Emma K. Daub Elementary. Maya Serenity Mortaya Campos from Potomac Heights Elementary. Lucille Bose from Springfield Middle. Rebecca Church from Boonesboro Elementary. Alex Kling from Barbara Ingram School for the Arts. And Jackie Unger from Williamsport High School. Congratulations to these talented students as well as their teachers. Thank you.
And congratulations to our students for their recognition. I enjoy music of all types. I'm also marveled by artwork. I have no artistic talent at all, and when I see what our students do, it just amazes me. So I appreciate their talent so much. Right now, I'm going to ask Mr. Haynes to come forward. He's Recruitment and Retention Coordinator for Washington County Public Schools. A couple of weeks ago, we had our ESP of the Year award celebration for 2022. And Mr. Haynes, I'd like to call on you at this time to recognize our finalists and our winner.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Michael, Mrs. Williams, members of the board. This year, I'm honored to congratulate our 5 members, our 5 finalists for the ESP of the Year. Representing transportation was Christopher Babby, who is a fleet service technician. He's been with us for 33 years. From Food Nutrition Services was Tara Eby, who is a regional kitchen manager at Clear Spring Middle School. She's been with us for 11 years. Our student services representative was Aaron Kelly. He's a special ed paraprofessional at South Hagerstown High School and also a coach there. He's been with us for 5 years. And from our administrative side was Linda Whittington, who is a school secretary at Paramount Elementary, who has also been with us for 33 years. And finally, representing maintenance and operations, and our 2022 ESP of the Year was Diane Longnecker, who is from Boonesboro Middle School, and she has been with us for 20 years. We would like to now present a video that was played during that ceremony, and I would note to our viewers on Channel 99 that there will be a slight delay to that.
Chris is willing to help us any way he can. He jumps right in, lends a hand.
Chris is mainly responsible for our white fleet, which is all of our non-school buses, so our entire maintenance fleet, our out-of-county fleet. When our staff members are getting in those vehicles, they know that there's a lot of care and attention that goes into that, and they're getting into that safe vehicle.
If someone's having an issue, most of the time they don't even have to ask. Chris learns about it, he's there to help.
He loves WCPS, he loves the people he's working with, and so his care is just out on his sleeve, and that's just the kind of person he is.
Para Evie is a great candidate for ESP of the Year. Clear Spring Middle School has a brand new staff this year, so she's been a really good part of making sure that everybody knows what they need to do and how to do it. Para is responsible for all the production that happens here at Clear Spring Middle School. She's not only preparing food for the middle school, but she's also preparing all the food for the elementary school here on the complex. The relationships that she builds with kids is just fantastic. She cares about them. She has this gigantic heart that she just wants to make sure that every one of her kids at the school are well taken care of.
Mr. Kelly is a joy to work with. He's very responsible, friendly, reliable. He kind of is like a jack of all trades. He fills in and helps as needed. He does small groups and helps with extra supports for students that have some specific needs.
He is able to adjust to the abilities of the kids, and he's very, very effective at what he does. For many years, Coach Kelly has assisted with cross country, and he's also been an assistant track coach before taking over as head track coach. He just loves to be involved with South High, and he does a wonderful job.
I have not seen him in these 5 years really ever have a bad day. He's always happy, smiling, and on the go.
Miss Whittington is the heart of the building because everything kind of runs through her. She keeps all of us on track, the teachers, myself. She just keeps everything moving, and she does it seamlessly. It doesn't seem like it's an effort. She's never one to complain about what she has to do. She just puts a smile on and keeps moving through the day.
Let's go see your bed.
I love listening to her as she's greeting our visitors or maybe students that are coming in late from an appointment or something like that, because she just makes them feel so comfortable. And I imagine that if they're having a bad day, they feel better once they have passed by her and interacted with her, because she's just so warm and welcoming.
Diane is the kind of person that she sees the things that other people might miss. She makes sure that our building's safe for students. She makes sure that it's clean, which has been huge during COVID. But I think the thing that sets her apart is her positive attitude about everything. And our students, like Diane is definitely someone that they know in our building. She is someone they respect. And when she was named as one of the finalists for ESP of the Year, you could hear the whole school cheer for her. And throughout the rest of the day, students were giving her high fives and just telling her how excited they were, because she means a lot to them.
We can congratulate our ESP finalists. Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Thank you. We had a very wonderful ceremony that night, and congratulations to nominate our 5 finalists and to Diane, but also to all of our ESP that worked so hard to make our system run. At this time, we want to have some other recognitions of staff for state awards for outstanding gifted and talented teachers. And Drista Bowser is going to come forward and share that information with us.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, and Dr. Michael. The Maryland State Advisory Council on Gifted and Talented Education honored several teachers across the state with the award Outstanding Educator in Gifted and Talented Education, Teacher as Leader. These teachers do an exceptional job of meeting the needs of our gifted and talented students, and they go above and beyond the expectations of their positions every day. Additionally, they attend ongoing professional development and demonstrate leadership by providing professional development, as well as writing curriculum for their school at the county level, and some even at the state level. The teachers who earned this honor were Elizabeth Baumgardner, the gate teacher from Eastern Elementary School; Jennifer Klinger, a magnet teacher from Boonesboro Elementary School; and Jordan Himes, a magnet teacher from Boonesboro Elementary. Congratulations to these exceptional Washington County Public Schools educators.
Thank you, Tristan. Congratulations, staff, for your awards. Board members, annually we have an Equity Initiatives update, and I'm going to call on Allison Smith to come forward, our Supervisor of Equity and Excellence, for a brief update.
Good evening, Dr. Michael, President Williams, and members of the board. It is a pleasure to be here tonight to provide your equity update for Washington County Public Schools. Per our educational equity policy, a report is to be provided annually to the board regarding the progress of the implementation of this policy and the action plan. Since our last update, there have been a number of actions taken to support our commitment to equity. Over the course of the last year, we've been confronted with equity concerns related to all areas of schooling. Washington County Public Schools faced each challenge and worked towards removing barriers that might prevent students from learning. Through these experiences, we've deepened our understanding of equity, confirming that it is central to our work. Throughout the 2021-2022 school year, we have continued the work focusing primarily on 4 important areas aligned to our action plan. Providing support for the use of an equity lens as we review Washington County Public School policies. Bringing focus to identifying and mitigating opportunity and performance gaps that exist between our highest performing students and our lowest performing student groups as required by the state and evidenced in our reopening plan. Developing professional learning and providing training opportunities for WCPS staff. And finally, providing individualized support to schools as requested. As we review some specific actions, I would like to take a moment to share the definition of one key idea, cultural proficiency. Developing the cultural proficiency of our organization has been the cornerstone of our efforts. The following slides highlight the important work that has been happening since your last report. As we ended last school year and began the current year, school systems across the country were all grappling with overcoming barriers created by the pandemic. More than ever, it was clear that focused attention must be given to the social-emotional well-being of our students to address issues related to chronic absenteeism, student engagement, challenging behaviors, and unfinished learning. The common denominator in overcoming these barriers and the Washington County Public Schools acceleration model was strong teacher-student relationships, which are at the heart of educational equity. As a result, the Office of Equity made a shift in our professional development efforts to focus on social-emotional learning, equity, and cultural proficiency, which are all interconnected to address Goal 1. We continue to work on increasing our capacity to expand professional learning opportunities to all staff, to build awareness, commitment, and move to action. Highlights of this work in Goal 2 include optional professional development opportunities throughout the school year. New teachers receive training annually. Assistant principals are scheduled to have training in the spring of this year. School-based teacher leaders meet quarterly to receive training on providing support in their individual school buildings. And that school-based staff training has been provided by those teacher leaders with quarterly and individual support by the Supervisor of Equity and Excellence. Goal 3 is likely the most important goal of all. This work cannot be done in isolation. It requires the collective effort of every stakeholder group to ensure that every student is a college or career ready. Washington County Public Schools partners with community groups like the Chamber of Commerce Racial Equity Work Group, Envy, Hark, and On Track to improve our community and our school system by addressing topics such as youth violence, hiring and recruitment efforts, and financial empowerment through education. Moving forward, we will continue to look for opportunities to connect with additional community stakeholder groups, collaborate with other Maryland school districts to share ideas related to training, and partner with the Maryland State Department of Education as a liaison to ensure that this Board of Education is current on equity work going on around the state. Finally, Goal 4. The Office of Equity and Excellence is excited to begin partnering with Human Resources as we work to further develop strategies that will strengthen our recruitment and retention efforts to provide a workforce that is representative of our schools and the greater community. Our work regarding equity will hinge on this important idea. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, it is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. To be clear, this work is not about taking anything away from anyone, but about ensuring that every student has the necessary resources to succeed. Thank you for your time, your support, and continued commitment to every Washington County Public Schools student as we strive to positively impact student achievement.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate the update. Board members, that's according to policy, and we'll be glad to answer any questions and certainly provide future updates.
Colleagues, questions?
I just have one question. When I hear the word barriers, it to me sounds like something that can be removed immediately. So I know that it's not as easy as I make it sound, but you mentioned barriers. What current barriers are in place that I gotta imagine that we just wouldn't know about them. So can you give us an example of something that we as a board could, really kind of focus on and work on right now to work on that?
I think that the important work of this board is looking at our policies through an equity lens. That is your most important, I think, challenge as we are looking for, identifying the barriers for yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Last report, under Superintendent's report, we're trying to keep the board updated. There are 5 main components of the blueprint for Maryland's future. Dr. Willow is our local coordinator, hopefully to be replaced July 1, here to have a permanent coordinator for our blueprint efforts. But he wants his burden. I think this thing is starting to turn into not only every day, but every hour effort. We constantly are talking about the Maryland Blueprint. So tonight I've asked Dr. Willow to give us an update on college and career readiness.
Well, good evening, President Williams, Dr. Michael, members of the board. As Dr. Michael started, there are 5 major policies with Blueprint. We've talked a little bit about early childhood. That's our pre-K program. And for us, we are in a very good place with pre-K because we have expanded to universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds. 2 board meetings ago, we talked a little bit about national board certification. And if you remember, last July, we did a presentation on the career ladder. That is that high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. Dr. Michael alluded, tonight I'll be talking about college and career readiness. And we have 2 more presentations scheduled for April and May for more resources for student success, governance, and accountability. So we will spend some time in those areas as well. So let's talk a little bit about college and career readiness. This is different than graduation. So I always tell people, do not confuse graduation requirements with college and career readiness. What we look for college and career readiness is that a student leaves with literacy skills and math skills to be successful, whether they go to a 2-year, 4-year, career pathway, military, that there are certain skills that we want every high school student to leave with. So we talk about what do we currently have in place to measure college and career readiness. And so the first area is English, and this is actually all spelled out in the Blueprint law. English 10, historically we've used PARCC. PARCC has gone away, and in the fall, we used fall MCAP, and then currently here in the spring, there is a spring MCAP. And a proficiency score is defined as a 3 for spring MCAP, and an advanced score is a 4. Students in 10th grade that end up with a 3 or 4 are considered college and career ready for English. For math, we look at Algebra 1, Algebra 2, or Geometry. A passing score on any of those 3 assessments is considered college and career ready for math. So our students in 9th, 10th, 11th, and even in 12th grade have the opportunity to earn a college and career passing score on any of those assessments. The math SAT of a 520 also counts for college and career readiness. College and career readiness has been around for a number of years prior to Blueprint. Blueprint updated it. And what it also is requiring is that we look at other factors at the state level other than state assessments. But it starts with state assessments, and then MSDE will put a committee together to look at other things that we should consider, such as GPA, other performance indicators other than just MCAP. So why does CCR matter? And this is probably the big part of Blueprint, are the post-CCR pathways. So once a student meets the CCR standard, meaning that they've passed both math and English, they enter different pathways based on their choice. The first 2 are very familiar to us, the IB diploma, the AP program. I'm not going to highlight them tonight because they're very traditional. There's not much change in what we would be doing. The 3rd and 4th, Blueprint changes significantly. So let's talk dual enrollment for a second. Dual enrollment means that a student has the opportunity to earn a high school credit and a college credit. And so what Blueprint allows for is a student to possibly earn up to 60 college credits their junior and senior year, so the equivalent of an associate's degree. Career and technical education programs, I'm going to spend a little time on that as well. So if we go into the dual credit pathway, let me explain what we're looking at here. This is an MSDE example. MSDE has presented this. This does not mean that this would be our exact pathway. We will work with our parents, our teachers, our administrators, as a DOC team, HCC, of course, Hagerstown Community College, and our businesses to create our own pathways. But this is an example of what MSDE put out as a dual credit pathway. You'll see that some of the classes are highlighted, like World Language, English 10, English Pre-Calc, and if I went all the way across there, those represent potential dual credit classes, meaning that a student is getting high school and college credit. So again, student takes the CCR in their 9th and 10th grade year for math, 10th grade for English, and students that meet that standard have the opportunity to go into this pathway. It does not mean that we exclude students who are not CCR. I'll talk about the supports we put in place for them here in a later slide. Let's talk a little bit about career and technology pathways. So Blueprint sets a goal for 45% of our students to either have had an apprenticeship or an industry-recognized assessment. Oftentimes we call these technical skills assessments, or TSAs, in our CTE classes. So what that means is that our CTE programs relate to a student going into the workforce so that they're meaningful. So we will spend some time over the next year looking at our CTE pathways, the technical skills assessments that we have in place. Fortunately, we're in a very good place where we have PAC, which is our advisory groups that help us, business partners that help advise us in these CTE pathways, that make a big difference as we're creating these programs and constantly updating them with the state. We have talked a little bit here about apprenticeship. So the difference with apprenticeship is it requires coursework and the employment. That's different than what we have. Some of you might be familiar with career research. This is an apprenticeship is our coursework and the occupation or the employment that goes with it. MSDE put out another model of how they envision the apprenticeship working in Blueprint. So a student could potentially start as early as their sophomore year, doing some schoolwork, academic courses, but also going out and doing hands-on learning with our partners. That increases their junior year, and then by their senior year, you can actually see where they potentially could have no academic classes and actually working full-time in their apprenticeship. Again, the idea is for students that know what they want to do or they have an interest in a certain occupation, and this is an opportunity to go out and get that additional training, hands-on learning in our different CTE pathways. So let's talk about for students that do not have that initial CCR. We call these support pathways. Again, I want to be clear, it doesn't mean that we exclude students from the other pathways. It just means that we're adding additional layers of support to help that student get to that college and career readiness for literacy and math. So each student has an individual plan, and it could include additional classes during the day. We could look at credit recovery, in some cases, summer courses. Again, I've mentioned an individualized plan and tutoring. Again, it's what does that student need in order to get to that level of proficiency that we're looking for. And so for each student, that could be different based on their individual needs. So that's a lot. We have a lot of work to do here in the next year to prepare for this. What Ardith, Ms. Cade mentioned earlier is that we expect next year to be a planning year, and then for both the support and post CCR pathways to begin during the 23-24 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Lowell. Any questions tonight?
I noticed on there, one of the first slides, I got to sit up before I catch heck from my interpreter back there. She's laughing. Do we still have students in school who had to pass the PARC requirement? Because PARC was done away with how many years ago?
It would be very, there could be some cases where we had some seniors that would have taken PARC as an 8th grade for algebra. So that's why it's still included in there. But it's very rare that we have, the majority of our students are now MCAP.
Well, it's also included for English.
Yes, because in theory, they kept both to just sort of show the transition, that it was a 4 and 5 to PARC for some students that might have had a PARC assessment. Even when you go back to middle school, students had PARC assessments. So 4 and 5 had always been the proficiency. Going forward, it's MCAP. All of our juniors have had MCAP. I mean, almost all of our students would have MCAP.
When did the state get rid of PARC? How long ago was it?
About 5 years ago, Dr. Michael?
I guess.
Probably
Right,
4 years.
4 years ago, maybe, they started transitioning.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Gupta?
So we saw on the Technology Pathways slide that said that the blueprint sets a goal for 45% of high school students to be completing an apprenticeship or an industry-recognized occupational credential. So about how much percent are we at right now in an apprenticeship or are able to get some sort of credential?
So our actual apprenticeship model is rather new. We did just hire an apprenticeship coordinator. We actually have the biggest apprenticeship program in the state of Maryland. We are #1. I believe we're actually over 50 students with a plan to significantly ramp that up. I believe that we'll have probably by the beginning of next year, potentially close to 100 students. And then I think from there it will continue to grow. As far as our technical skills assessment, right now we're going through all of the new what can count and what can no longer count as part of those technical skills assessments. So I don't want to give a figure on that until we get a little bit more clarification on what we can and can't count.
So is 45% like definitely achievable by 2023?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Willow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tonight, we're sending a s'more. It's our newsletter communication. I don't know if it's gone out yet, but if it hasn't, it generally around 7 o'clock we go out, but it'll go out soon if it hasn't already. Announcing a graduation schedule. We're on track for, obviously, in-person graduation. Many of the schools will be doing graduations in their stadium, which will require a rain date. We do have a few schools that are doing inside graduations. We also have a list of our spring celebrations. which will be video presentations over a series of Wednesday nights. And I think they start the last week in March. Also excited, I hope to announce what we believe to be the last half day of school, which will be Tuesday, June 7th, barring any more snow. And there's always a potential. I tell staff, it seems like we had one spring where we had a severe storm or flooding or something where we were closed. Though it's only one I can remember in the late spring over the last 43 years, but it's always possible. But right now, we're anticipating June 7th will be our last day for our other students. And other information will be in that SMORE presentation tonight as well. Mrs. Williams, that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. We'll move to personnel action with Dr. Pugh. Good evening, Dr. Pugh.
Good evening, Mrs. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. As discussed earlier in closed session today, there are a number of staff changes before you for your consideration, and at this time, I ask for your approval of personnel actions.
Is there a motion?
President Williams, I move to approve the personnel actions dated Tuesday, March 15th, 2022, as presented in closed session.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any questions for Dr. Pugh? All those in favor of the personnel actions as discussed earlier in closed session? Okay, I have 7 affirmatives. I have a unanimous vote, so those are approved. Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Reports to the board. We'll begin with board member committee reports. Dr. Zentmeyer, would you like to begin down there?
Our next CNI meeting will be here next Monday at 1:30.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, the Finance Committee, we just actually changed our meeting from April 29th to April 28th.
And the time?
Oh, geez, you asked me. I think it's 9 or 9:30?
The morning meeting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gessert?
Our next facilities meeting will be March 28th, Monday at 10 a.m.
28th at 10?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Bickford?
Policy Review and Development Committee actually had to postpone its recent meeting, and we are meeting tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. in the Smithsburg room. Mr. Gupta, make sure you get that. And we will be hearing from Mr. Gupta on a presentation about the grading system for secondary schools. We'll also be reviewing the policy JEA, which is Pregnant and Parenting Students Attendance Policy, which also had a nice write-up in the newspaper. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow.
The Human Resources Committee will meet on Tuesday, April 12th, here at the CES at 10 o'clock a.m.
Mr. Gupta, Student Government?
Yes, the Washington County Association of Student Council is currently meeting about once a week, and we are planning for our next General Assembly, I think, March 31st.
Do you want to report on anything with regard to the Legislative Committee on Monday?
No, I passed, we heard the report. I passed on all the information, the documents that I received for the May Legislative Committee meeting. When you read some of those bills, you got to think, who comes up with those ideas we said earlier? So for me, the session can never end too soon, because I worry about the mandates that may come out of Annapolis from the General Assembly.
Miscellaneous business. We have future agenda items coming up in April. We have quite a few recognitions, and those are both April meetings. We have recognitions. On April 5th, our first meeting in April, we'll have a report on birth to 5 services, and then we have future updates on the blueprint on April 19th, and I believe Dr. Willow will be doing that for us. Is that correct, Dr. Willow? All right, great. So those are upcoming agenda items. Colleagues, if you have any suggestions for future agenda items, please let me or a member of the Agenda Planning Committee know. We've not met in person for a while. We've been meeting virtually, but we'll take your ideas and see about getting them on the agenda for an upcoming meeting. We'll move to board member comments. Mr. Gupta, would you like to begin down there?
Sure. Yesterday, Monday, I had the great experience of talking to a social worker at Mogginsville Elementary School, and I was surprised at how much work they do, how diverse the work they are doing, and exactly what they do. I heard some very, very heartbreaking stories. Mogginsville isn't our most needy school in terms of social problems, and social and behavior problems, but I heard a lot of stories about how, 5-10 years ago, it wasn't like this, and now it's starting to change. What used to only happen at summit schools or schools that are known for it happening, it's now happening at schools like Mogginsville, and it's happening with greater frequency and it's happening with greater severity. She told me she had to file multiple risk assessments for elementary schoolers. And if you don't know what risk assessments are, they're students with suicidal ideations for elementary schoolers. And that was very, very shocking to me. So I just want to say it's a very enlightening experience to all my board members. I would certainly encourage you to talk to a social worker or to visit a school and talk with their social worker, because I thought it was very enlightening.
Yes, I have two things. On Thursday, I was privileged to be a guest reader to Miss Morey's fourth grade class at Greenbrier Elementary. The students asked great questions and were a wonderful audience. They gave me some really nice thank you notes, which I appreciated. So I want to thank them for the opportunity, and I hope that they will invite me again. And the other thing is, I'm wearing my Maryland scarf tonight because I'm celebrating Maryland Day. And for those of you who don't remember your fourth grade teachings about Maryland Day, it's on March 25th, and it commemorates the day in 1634 when settlers disembarked from two small sailing ships to Maryland. They were the Ark and the Dove. So that's my little lesson for today. I love anything Maryland.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Mr. Bickford.
I think that had a bit of inspiration by Dr. Zettmeyer, right?
That was a Dr. Zettmeyer, that's
There
right.
we go. Aren't you impressed?
And for the rest of the story.
Yeah. I remember from fourth grade learning the Maryland dog is a Chesapeake Bay Retriever.
That's right.
Of course, the Baltimore Oriole. And
Black-eyed Susan.
yeah, and the Y oak is the tree, right? Here we go. So that's it for me.
Mr. Stalbrook.
Yes, in my packet Friday evening, I received an envelope addressed to me, Board of Ed, CES, and up in the return address, it said payroll. So I thought, what I do wrong now? The payroll's contacted me. So I opened them up, and there were thank you notes from Mrs. Shoemaker's third grade class at Greenbrier Elementary. I had the privilege recently of going down there and reading Mr. Peabody's Apples to them. And I don't want to get too melodramatic here or anything, but folks, when you get things like this and you read these from these young children and so forth, this is, I hate to say it, but this is why I was a teacher for 42 years. When you see that they appreciate and they like what you did and everything, it's like that old TV commercial. It's priceless. You can't put a price on things like that. So I unfortunately can't post these on Facebook as one of my colleagues has done, because she has an administrative assistant, I think, who might have helped her with that. But
Not at all.
not at all?
Not
Okay.
at all.
All righty. Okay. My apologies.
Thank you. I'm not going to break out in any type of song tonight or any dance, any Irish jigs, but I would like to thank my wife for making this wonderful outfit of St. Patrick's Day for me. So my colleagues got a big smile, and so did I. So thank you to my wife, and I'd like to wish all my colleagues a nice, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you, Mr. Gesford. Mr. Evans?
I think you guys pretty much said it all. I hope everyone has a great rest of the month. We'll look forward to seeing y'all in a couple weeks.
Ah, sighed Maisie, the lazy bird hatching her egg. I'm tired and I'm bored and I've kinks in my legs from sitting here day after day. It's work. How I hate it. I'd much rather play. I think maybe we've all been in Maisie's place time one or two in our whole lives. However, when I was invited to read a book at Greenbrier, I remember Dr. Seuss's book, Horton Hatches the Egg, my first library book, and the impact on me as a first grade reader, that hopefully that lesson of faithful diligence versus lazy will be passed on as we continue to teach. So Mrs. Berman's first grade Greenbrier students, thank you so much for allowing me to read my favorite book, and thank you for the lovely notes. I will cherish them.
Fire. Well, as Mr. Stauffer said, I did post some pictures of thank you notes from the students in Mrs. Haley Barnhart's 5th grade class at Greenbrier. And I think Mrs. Barnhart thought she was just having a reader, but I kind of launched into my teaching mode, and it was wonderful. I was able to share my love of Chris Van Allsburg as an author, and of course they were very familiar with Polar Express and Jumanji, but I was able to introduce them to another of his works. We had a nice discussion, and it was just great to be there. And it's one of the whys, you know, when people say, why do you do this? Why do you put yourself through this? That's one of the big whys. So, Dr. Michael, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
Nothing further this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have anything before we adjourn?
When he retires, he'll be in the classrooms reading.
And reading. Absolutely. All right. Well, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.